Welcome back to the class on international business communication. We have been talking about different things relating to communication. We have been talking about barriers. We talked about what communication is. We've talked about intercultural communication. We've talked about business communication in different settings. Today we are going to finish the class on barriers. There was still some bit left, and we will start with the importance of listening in business communication. Now, we have talked about different aspects, but listening, as you will soon realize, is one of the most important things in business communication. So let's get started. Okay, revision as usual. The first thing I would like you to think about again and discuss in class is what are the different kinds of barriers an organization may face, and I had asked you to think about the kinds of barriers your organizations face and how you deal with them, and that is something that I would like you to discuss in class again today. What are the different kinds of barriers that organizations face, and how do organizations deal with these barriers, and how can individuals in different organizations deal with these barriers? Okay, once you've discussed this, then we can move on to the next part. We had discussed about some of the barriers. Some more barriers that one can come across in any form of professional or personal communication are: the first one is social barriers. And when we talk about social barriers, we are essentially talking about interpersonal barriers to communication, the barriers we face when we are dealing with other people, when we are in a group or a meeting, or in a team, the kinds of barriers we face in communication. And again, none of these are mutually exclusive. None of these are essentially just by themselves. They occur in conjunction with the other types of barriers. So you may have intrapersonal barriers, which could be our attitudes and perceptions and semantic barriers and all of that. And in addition to that, we may also have these cultural barriers, which is what we talked about sometime earlier: our tendency to stereotype, our tendency to not accept different points of view, our tendency to not accept different people. And you may have come across this at some point in your communication with people, when you must have seen this. Sometimes we don't like people. We feel uncomfortable about people. They've not done anything to make us uncomfortable. They have not said anything to us to make us uncomfortable. But somehow the vibes just don't match. So when we have that situation, and sometimes it is the cultural issues that make us feel uncomfortable around certain people. For example, and if you look at the color of clothes I'm wearing today, I purposely wore this because we were talking about barriers. Now, somebody in a Western country may find this to be very festive, and somebody from, say, a westernized multinational company may think that this is too informal for a professional official presentation like this. Why? Because I'm wearing this deep pink color that has golden paint on it, and I'm wearing a heavily embroidered kurta, which is silk. So it's like, are you going to a wedding or something, or are you coming here to teach a class? Now, I purposely wore this so that you would feel the impact of this in the class itself. Some of you may feel, what is this teacher? Why is she wearing such fancy festive clothes? And somebody will say, well, it's the festival season, Baisakhi, and we're in India, and we really don't pay very much attention to the color of people's clothes. But then there are some cultural barriers we may face, and you'll say, somebody who doesn't know the difference between professional dressing up and festive dressing up is just not qualified to teach me about communication. So that may prevent you from listening to what I'm saying, and that may in turn result in some sort of casual interaction from your side to me. Okay. The next thing here is language barriers, which is our inability or unwillingness to talk to people who speak a different language than ours. And some of you who have been in different states, and I'm specifically referring to this class as a class in India. I hope other people in other countries see this video and can also relate to it. But India is as multicultural as it gets. Every state has its own dialect, has its own set of languages. For example, when I come from northern India, and when I've come to Bengal, initially my instinct was to find a Hindi speaking person. And if I found somebody speaking Punjabi, I used to be thrilled. Oh my God, this person is, I can relate to this person. I may not know the person at all, but even if I don't speak Punjabi at home, the minute I hear Punjabi, my first instinct is to go up and start talking to the person in Punjabi because I feel more close to them. On the other side, if I'm in touch with, or if I'm working with a group of people who are working on the same lines as me, but for whatever reason keep going back to Bengali or Odia or another language, just because they share that language, I don't feel so connected with them, and I feel somehow hampered in contributing to the discussion that is going on in the group. Why? Because we are not talking in the same language. We may be using English to communicate essential points to each other, or even Hindi at times, but the Hindi is heavily laced with a Bengali accent, and my Hindi is heavily laced with a Punjabi accent. And so that can prevent us. Similarly, when we go abroad, Indians, I'm sure, feel this. The minute we see a Hindi speaking person, we immediately gravitate towards them. You go on campus, and that is what happened to me when I went abroad. Everybody used to be in jeans and jackets, and I grew up wearing jeans, so no big deal. But the minute I saw somebody wearing kurta, pajama or a salwar kameez like this, my first instinct was to oh God, I've come home. I have reached a place where I can find somebody similar to me. So I'm sure this person has turmeric in their house, and I'm sure this person eats the kind of food I do, and they know what dal and rice is, and they know what dal and rajma is, and they know what paranthas are, and immediately, even if I don't know the person, the first instinct is to go and start a conversation with such a person, as opposed to somebody who's wearing a completely different set of clothes. So, these are language and cultural barriers are intertwined. My first instinct is to start talking in Hindi. I crave for somebody to talk in Hindi with, even though I'm equally comfortable speaking in English. The next barrier that we face in communication with other people are the gender barriers. And I'm sure you have noticed this in your interactions amongst yourselves, especially people in smaller towns. What happens when you go to a class, when you're in a co-educational environment? You've been in an only girls school and an only boys school till class 12. You come to college and you go to a co-educational college, and you're put in teams, and girls have to work with boys. And what happens when you come to class? One side of the class is only boys, one side of the class is only girls. Yes, you're put in separate hostels, but when you come to class, you don't want to sit with friends. Why? Because there'll be this whispering going on. Oh my God. So we fear that. Plus we feel we've been so and again, the society organizes itself in different ways to stay controlled, to stay as uncomplicated as possible. But when we have to interact with people of other genders, especially when we start doing this, there is some sort of a discomfort in communicating, in speaking to, and in our ability to understand where the person from the other gender is coming across. And a very popular book that deals with this issue is Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, or the other way around. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact title, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And so we think on different planes because we have different priorities, because we grow up knowing that we will be looking after different things in our lives. That is pretty much where this difference comes from. And of course, there are some inherent differences also in the way we deal with things. Women are known to be softer, and if you find a woman who's very good with numbers, who's into operations and finance, you're like, how would this lady know what real operations is, or how would this lady know what these numbers mean? There's something wrong. There's something wrong with her expertise. So we find it hard to start believing these things. Things are becoming more and more open now. Many more women in disciplines like engineering or even civil engineering as opposed to computer science engineering. That is something that you might be able to relate with. But we are coming out more and more. And of course, in management, the typical thing that women choose is say HR or organizational behavior or stuff like that. But anyway, these are gender barriers. So these things prevent us from communicating with our peers as well as we would like to. The next social barrier that we face is interpersonal barriers, and this is what I was talking about earlier. We just don't like the person. We get different vibes from a person. So, you know, we all feel this. For some reason, we don't like some interpersonal trait, and that prevents us from expressing ourselves as freely and as clearly as we would like to. Then the last one here is barriers related to the medium of transmission of the message. And this is something that I talked about in one of the earliest lectures when we talked about the context, difference in context. And I shared an experience with you where somebody got offended because I chose a different channel of communication than the one this person was comfortable with. I remember giving you the example of you know, this card that the business card that I was going to get made, and I found it more comfortable for the other person, thinking that the other person would be as comfortable with email as I was. And I just sent this person an email asking him when the cards would be ready, and he thought that I was creating a negative record against him by putting all this in writing. So that was the discomfort with, he said, you could have just picked up a phone and called me and asked me, why did you have to create a negative record about me that I did not get your business cards made when I should have? And I thought that by using an email, I was giving the other person enough time to find out the details and respond to me at his own convenience. So, you know, there are different perspectives, and we all have our opinions about which channel of communication, which medium of transmission of the message is the best. And that in turn influences the context of in which the message is being drafted and the context in which the message is being interpreted. And that in turn results in miscommunication or problems with communication or difficulties with communication, or our inherent difficulties in drafting and receiving the message as clearly as we would like to, or as clearly as the sender or receiver would like to. So there are so many factors, all interrelated, nothing mutually exclusive. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of barriers of communication. Let's move on to the next topic, which is listening, and that is going to be the major part of what we cover today. Listening, quoted in this very nice book by Professor Monipalli, who teaches at IIM Ahmedabad, is, and he's quoted the sentence in that book, and he says, speech is difficult, but silence is impossible. And I'm sure if all of you were sitting here, I would hear a few giggles in the class. And silence is impossible, and I want you to really think about this, and we'll talk about this more in the next class. So today I just want you to mull over this sentence. Now, listening, according to Professor Monipalli, is the active, listening according to Seiler and Beale, is the active process of receiving, constructing meaning from, and responding to spoken or non-verbal messages. So it's not only what goes in through your ear. It is also what you see, it is what you hear in the context of where you hear it, how you perceive it, who is saying it. All that contributes to how we listen. Please think about it. Now I have something very interesting to share with you. We are going to see the difference between hearing and listening, and I think a class on listening is incomplete without this clip on Helen Keller's life. And you can look up who Helen Keller was on Google, but I'll just share this clip with you that I've downloaded from YouTube. So please watch this clip and discuss about it in class.
In 1882, the 19-month-old daughter of an Alabama couple lay near death. The brain fever that attacked the infant Helen Keller didn't kill her, but it did leave her blind, deaf, and mute. She would emerge from that void, however, to illuminate the world for others. Her message of hope and her rare courage established her as one of the most remarkable women of the century. Traversing the globe, she selflessly delivered inspiration to those in need. The ultimate ability of man, she wrote, is to conquer despair.
Every step and road you are taking.
I know every step of the road you are taking.
The obstacles you meet are many.
Because the obstacles you meet are many.
Trapped in a world of silent darkness, she opened the eyes of the world. Helen Keller never heard the cheers of the crowds who greeted her. She never saw their faces. Her commitment to others transcended any need to experience their gratitude. Perhaps the only thing more impressive than her selflessness was her triumph over her handicaps. Until she was 7, she groped and flailed and threw tantrums in a desolate emptiness few of us can imagine. Then, on March 3rd, 1887, she felt the touch of a miracle worker. Reaching into Helen's darkness was a teacher from the Perkins Institution for the Blind, Annie Sullivan, who herself suffered from failing eyesight. At first, Helen rejected Annie's help, but Annie Sullivan was as headstrong as Helen Keller. She knew that language was the key to opening Helen's world. Using a hand alphabet, she spelled out words for objects Helen could touch. She tried desperately to get Helen to make the connection between the object and the hand-signed word. But out of her darkness, Helen could only respond with rage. Then came what Helen Keller later wrote was the most important moment of her life. It was dramatized in The Miracle Worker, a Pulitzer Prize-winning play and an Oscar-winning movie.
Yes. Yes. Oh, my dear.
Round. Yes. Pump.
At the age of 7, Helen Keller for the first time entered a world of knowing. Later she wrote that when the mystery of language was revealed to her, it awakened her soul. It set her free. Helen now discovered she had a passion for learning. Quickly she mastered reading and writing in several different languages. Relying on Annie and the Braille system, she pursued a higher education, earning a degree from Radcliffe, a sister college of Harvard, in 1904. Afterwards, she became a successful author. She was, in fact, published for the first time at the age of 12. But Helen's key achievement, the one she craved most of all, was learning how to speak. Years later, on a lecture tour, she and Annie told the audience how that miraculous breakthrough came about.
And I let her see, by putting her hand on my face, how we talk with our mouths. She felt the vibration of the spoken word. After her 7th lesson, she was able to speak the sentence word by word. I am not dumb now.
No.
A worldwide celebrity by 1920, Helen even went to Hollywood. She starred in a silent movie about her extraordinary life. She was interested not in stardom, nor even fame, but making other handicapped people realize they could demand more out of life. I seldom think about my limitations, she wrote, and they never make me sad. Unable to hear, she enjoyed music by sensing vibrations. Unable to see, she enjoyed others dancing by sensing movement.
That is beautiful.
At home, she even lobbied the White House. She pressed her programs with every president during her adult life. Her message of hope brought tears to a former 5-star general. President Eisenhower was emotionally touched by her courage. In 1936, Annie Sullivan died at the age of 70. She freed me from the darkness, Helen wrote, by giving me the light of love. Each year thereafter, Helen marked the anniversary of the day she first met Annie by reflecting on what she herself was doing for others. Helen survived Annie by 32 years. From her home in Connecticut, she continued her work writing and fundraising for the American Foundation for the Blind. With her secretary, Polly Thompson, she pursued her twin goals of inspiration and awareness. For her, the ordinary and the routine were extraordinary. She was once at sea in a dense fog, she wrote, shut up in a tangible darkness. One of the most motivated people who ever walked the earth, she found a way to take herself out of that darkness. She attacked life, one friend said, with an insatiable need to know, with the vigor of a teenager. Helen Keller died in 1968 at the age of 88. Her message to the world was, see with your heart.
Okay, that is the end of this video, and I hope I'd like you to discuss what you thought of this video. I would like you to discuss how you viewed this video in terms of what you see around you in your interpersonal interactions, and especially the implications of such things on your in your workplace. And I would really like you to think about how listening, what is the difference between hearing and listening. The first thing that I'd like you to discuss is what you think is the difference between hearing and listening. And after you've had that discussion, and I hope it will take some time, we can move on to the differences that I think there are between hearing and listening. Now, this is what I've studied, and listening, I feel, is filtered heard sounds, which is the sounds coming in through our ears from the environment. Whatever we hear, that is hearing. We filter these heard sounds, we separate the noise from the sense-making sounds, and then we organize these sounds that make sense to us and perceive them in a pattern. For example, as I'm teaching this class, and now you can hear some sound here. Now, some of you may get distracted by the sound that I make with my kada over here. on the table. But others who are more focused on learning, or who have a better ability to filter out the sense making sounds from the sounds that don't make so much sense, will be able to focus more on what I'm saying and maybe even jot down some points. Now, in this room there is no distraction, but it's possible that there may be some distraction where you're sitting. For example, one of these days there was some banging going on during the class, and I made a mention of it, that that is noise, and that can prevent you from communicating in the environment. So there could be the fans, there could be birds chirping, there could be people talking in the corridor, there could be some cell phone going off, which I hope doesn't happen in your classes. That's an absolute no-no at IIT Kharagpur. So we don't allow students to bring in their cell phones into the class, and even if they do, they have to turn their phones on silent mode. Otherwise, it's just not permitted. We don't carry our cell phones to class either. So anyway, so we filter these sounds that we hear, and we focus on the sounds that are making a lot more sense to us, and we perceive these sounds, and our perception is biased. I want to learn this from this particular lecture, and so I select only what the teacher is saying. I focus on what is up on the board. I focus on what I've just seen. We are talking about listening. I showed you a video. I hope you're thinking about that video, and you're focusing on the video that you saw and what I'm talking about, and are able to connect the two. And I know if this class is being broadcast in India and you're sitting in India and watching it, some of this clip must have reminded you of a very popular movie called Black, which was based on Helen Keller's life. Anyway, so that is what listening is. Now, why should we listen? We listen for various reasons. We listen to get information. We may listen to evaluate what is going on in our environment. We may listen to empathize with people around us, which means try and understand their point of view. We could also listen to socialize or have a dialogue. And please discuss in your class how this would happen. And I want the teacher teaching the class to pause this lecture, and after the discussion is complete, here is my take on it. When we engage in dialogue or when we socialize, we speak to somebody, we share our point of view, we listen to their point of view, we filter out whatever they have said to us, we choose the points that we want to respond to in a biased and selective manner, and then we take those points as stimuli for our next conversation or the next part of the dialogue we have with them. And of course, we listen for enjoyment, music, classical musicians sitting in on these classical music competitions, or sitting in on Indian Idol or American Idol or whatever you have out there. Listen to look for faults. They listen to evaluate. Let's take that example. We take the example of a program like American Idol or Indian Idol, and you have all these musicians coming in and sharing their skills with the audience. So the people sitting in the audience who are keen on becoming the next American Idol or the next Indian Idol are listening for information. What are they singing? What kinds of things are appreciated by judges? What classical complexities or what complexities of classical music do these musicians get into? So people sitting in the audience who want to either teach things in class or who want to train people for the next American Idol or Indian Idol, or people who want to participate in the next American or Indian Idol, are listening for information. Evaluation. The judges sitting there are evaluating. Where is this person going wrong? What can I improve? The teachers, the people who have taught these budding Indian Idols, or the people who have taught the people who are up on the stage performing, their teachers sitting in the audience, could be listening for evaluation. Where can I help this person improve? The judges would be saying, okay, where is this person going wrong? Where can I deduct marks? Where do I see a potential for the next American Idol or Indian Idol? Where can this person be groomed? Okay, empathy. People who have participated earlier and have lost, or people who participated earlier in the American Idol or Indian Idol, could be listening and they could be empathizing with this person. Oh yes, I had the same experience and I faced the same kind of problem, and this person, you know, I can feel what this person is feeling up there on the stage. Socialization or dialogue? Well, in that case, there is no socialization or dialogue, except, of course, the person's family is sitting and they're saying, see, my kid performed so well, and see, your kid didn't perform so well. So that kind of thing. And again, enjoyment. People like us, we are, some of us may not be connected in any manner to these people, but when we hear a good piece of music, we enjoy it, we remember some names, and then we forget it. You know, it helps us lighten our mood on a Saturday night or a Sunday night when these programs are broadcast. And then we look forward to the next Saturday and Sunday where we'll hear more complexities, more good music, and so that is why we listen to these programs. All right, what happens when we don't listen? When we are not receptive to the signals coming from our environments, when we don't listen, when there is a mismatch between the goals and perception of the message. The message has a goal, and the goal is decided by the person drafting the message. The goal is decided by the creator of the message. Okay? Now, when there is a mismatch between the goal of the person and the perception of the receiver, which is me, it causes loss of information. Something is lost. I am not receiving it in the spirit that it was intended to be broadcast. There is misinterpretation, and that loss of information results in misinterpretation or lack of appropriate interpretation. I don't think I need to go too much into detail about this. We've talked ad nauseum about the difference in contexts resulting in difficulties with communication, and this misinterpretation or lack of appropriate interpretation leads to conflict eventually. Okay. Some types of listening, according to Pamela Angel. We have two different types of listening. We have active listening and we have passive listening. When we listen actively, we listen to learn. We could be listening to learn things. We are actively paying attention to what is coming to us. We could be actively listening to provide a critical feedback, maybe sometimes even to criticize. Again, this is very similar to what we were just talking about. We are listening to evaluate. We could be listening to a sensitive or empathic listening when somebody is sharing some emotional experience they've had with us. We are listening to be sensitive. We are listening to put ourselves in their shoes and then try and understand their point of view. Dialogic listening or dialogue listening is when we are actively listening for clues for our next conversation. What can I pick up from whatever is coming to me, and how can I draft my next message? So that is actively paying attention to what is being said. The next part here is passive listening, in which we listen for pleasure, music, and casual, polite and conversational. You go to a party, you listen a little bit, you hear some things, you forget the other things, and so that is polite and conversational listening. So, you know, you go to another party with the same people after 6 months and you again ask them how old their children are and what classes their children are in. And that is polite and conversational, sort of, you know, it comes and goes. It just sort of passes by and we are in there. So, okay. I'm sure you know who Stephen Covey is. And according to him, the levels of listening are ignoring, which is what we do in big parties and big gatherings and big meetings, and we go to these meetings and lots of things are going on and we are trying to listen for things that pertain to our work. So what happens is we are listening and lots of people and big conference, and I know X was there. I recognize the voice of one of my colleagues, but I don't actively listen to what is being said. Somebody asks me, was so-and-so there? Who was there at that gathering? And I remember, but I don't really remember what this person said. So that is ignoring, the very basic level of listening. Pretending is when we try and get some gist of whatever is going on. We try and pick up a few cues regarding what is going on. Just to have a great idea, just to have a rough idea as to, you know, what do we need for the next conversation, but that's pretty much it. Selective listening, on the other hand, is when we pick some ideas from the input. We are actively looking for the ideas that pertain to our work for our next input. Pretending is, yeah, I know what was discussed, but if you ask me the specifics, I don't remember. But when we selectively listen, I'm selectively listening. I'm actively listening for things that I need to draft my next message to this audience or to another group of people, or if I want to tell my boss what was discussed specifically in my area, then I'll go to this meeting, I pick up cues. But if it's something that completely is on a completely different plane, then I don't really pay attention to it. Attentive listening is what I hope is going on in this class. I really hope that you are listening to what I'm saying and you're trying to understand what is being said in class, and this is what we trainers hope the trainees are doing. You actively listen to every bit and piece of the message that is coming to you and place it in the whole and try and understand the whole message. And empathic listening is when you actually can identify, oh my God, this poor lady has to sit in front of a camera and give us all this complicated information about communication, and she has to do it 40 times. And so that is empathic listening, which I hope some of my colleagues can identify with. I enjoy this, but then some of my colleagues can identify with, and they can I'm sure all of my colleagues know how much work goes into planning these lectures. So that is empathic listening, saying that 1 hour of this presentation would have taken at least 7 to 8 hours of preparation to prepare all of this stuff. Okay. The stages of effective listening, again, according to Seiler and Beale, are hearing, accepting the sounds that are coming in from the environment, understanding, making sense of those sounds, and again understanding, of course, what's implicit in understanding is the selective selection of appropriate signals, our bias in accepting those signals and making sense, organizing those signals to make sense of whatever is coming at us. Remembering, which means I need to remember what I've said and what I'm going to say and where the stimulus came from and what I need to connect it with. Interpreting, so you create a file in your computer and you save it, and you ideally give it a name that has a tag attached to it, something that relates to a bigger picture, and then you put it in the appropriate folder. And that is what remembering is all about. I remember whatever comes to me in light of some cues that will help me bring it back when I need it. I interpret whatever I hear. I put it in a context and try and understand what it means, what it can implicate, who can be connected with it, how do I need to draft my next response. And in light of all of this, I evaluate the message and then decide, do I need to respond to it? Do I not need to respond to it? Which folder does this go into? Favorable, unfavorable, comfortable, uncomfortable, needs to be responded to or does not need to be responded to. This is for enjoyment, this is urgent, this is archived, I will need it after a year but I don't need it today. This is family, this is business, this is this is that. So that is evaluating. Understand the message in context is interpreting, and placing it in the appropriate folder is evaluating. And that is, these are the different stages of effective listening. So hearing, understanding, remembering, interpreting and evaluating. Okay. Some barriers to listening. Okay, the barriers to listening are, and again I think we can deal with this next time. Before we come to the barriers, I really want to show you a very interesting clip and then maybe we can come back to the barriers. But first let us look at the implications for managers in the current business environment. What are the implications for managers? What are the implications of listening for managers in the current business environment? The first implication here is understanding and developing competence in verbal, non-verbal and digital communication. We need to develop competence, we need to become effective, and in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is be responsive to signals, be sensitive to the signals coming at us from our environments. And unless we do that, we cannot draft an appropriate response. Okay, so that is understanding and developing competence in verbal, non-verbal and digital communication. The second reason is that we are now a small world. We are global villages. It's very easy to be connected to different people. sitting on different parts of the planet, and that increases the complexity in our communication. That increases the difficulties with our communication. And so we need to listen actively. We need to be much more sensitive to what is coming to us from our environments, and we need to be able to understand where the person is coming from, what the context of this person may be, and how this, what do I need to do in order to get my work done. That's pretty much it in the business environment. We want people to be able to understand what we are saying. We want to be able to understand what they are saying. We also want people to be able to understand what we are saying and get our work done, and vice versa. So global villages, travel. We travel for pleasure, we travel for work, and again, everything depends on, we may know everything under the sun, we may be experts in whatever we do, but unless we are able to share that expertise with people who can put that expertise to use, our expertise is of no use. Please listen to what I said very carefully. I could be an expert on anything under the sun. Unless I am able to share my expertise with someone who can use that expertise, what I know is of no use. It doesn't mean anything. And that is why all these things are important. We need to listen in our personal lives. We need to be sensitive in order to be effective in our interpersonal relations. International interactions, definitely in light of whatever we have discussed about intercultural and international communication, we need to be able to receive these signals and select appropriately. And in light of the changing political scenario, we need to be able to listen and figure out what can make sense, what can go wrong, what I can tie these things to in the bigger global environment. Okay, I have an in-class exercise for you. Please watch the following clip from the movie The King's Speech. If you have a chance, please watch the entire movie yourselves. But and I've sought permission to use this clip, and I hope I will get it. So this is a clip, and it's in two parts. The first part actually deals with the situation, and the second part shows you what happens after this exercise has been done. So please be patient. I will need to adjust the clip a little bit, but let's see this clip, and then we'll discuss some more.
You can go in now, Mr. Johnson. Lionel says, wait here if you wish, Mrs. Johnson, or it being a pleasant day, perhaps take a stroll. Was that all right, Lionel?
Marvellous, Willie. You can stay here and wait for your mum. Mrs. Johnson? Mr. Johnson, do come in.
You like a sweetie?
He's a good lad, Willie. He could hardly make a sound, you know, when he first came to me. My boys make those. They're good, aren't they? Please, make yourself comfortable. I was told not to sit too close. Well, I believe when speaking with the prince, one waits for the prince to choose the topic.
Waiting for me to commence a conversation, one can wait rather a long wait.
Oh, yeah. Do you know any jokes?
Timing isn't my strong suit.
Cup of tea?
No, thank you.
I think I'll have one.
Aren't you going to start treating me, Dr. Loeb?
Only if you're interested in being treated. Please. Call me Lionel.
I prefer Doctor.
I prefer Lionel. What'll I call you?
Your Royal Highness. Then Sir, after that.
It's a little bit formal for here. I prefer names.
Prince Albert, Frederick, Arthur, George.
How about Bertie?
Only my family uses Sir.
Perfect. In here, it's better if we're equals.
If we were equals, I wouldn't be here. I'd be home with my wife, and no one would give a damn.
Well, please don't do that.
I'm sorry.
I believe sucking smoke into your lungs will kill you.
My physicians say it relaxes the throat.
They're idiots.
They've all been knighted.
Makes it official, then. My castle, my rules. Thank you. What was your earliest memory?
On earth, do you mean?
Your first recollection?
I'm not here to discuss personal matters.
Why are you here, then?
Because I bloody well stammer.
You have a bit of a temper.
One of my many faults.
When did the defect start?
I've always been this way.
I doubt that.
Don't tell me it's my stammer.
It's my field. I can assure you no infant starts to speak with a stammer. When did yours start?
4 or 5.
That's typical.
So I've been told. I can't remember not doing it.
I can believe that. Do you hesitate when you think?
Don't be ridiculous.
How about when you talk to yourself? And everyone natters to themselves occasionally, Bertie.
Stop calling me that.
I'm not going to call you anything else.
Then we shan't speak. Are you charging for this, Doctor?
A fortune. I'll just let that brew. So, when you talk to yourself, do you stammer?
Of course not.
Well, that proves that your impediment isn't a permanent part of you. What do you think was the cause?
Don't know. I don't care. I stammer. But no one can fix it.
I'll bet you that you can read flawlessly right here, right now. And if I win the bet, I get to ask you more questions.
And if I win?
Well, you don't have to answer them.
One usually wagers money.
The bob each to keep it sweet. Let's see your shilling.
I don't carry money.
I had a funny feeling you mightn't. I'll stake you and you can pay me back next time.
Say it is the next time.
I haven't agreed to take you on yet. So please stand and take a look at that from there.
I can't read this.
Well, then you owe me a shilling for not trying.
To be or not to be? That. Can't read.
I haven't finished yet. I'm going to record your voice and then play it back to you on the same machine. This is brilliant. It's the latest thing from America. It's a Silvertone. Pop these on. There's a bob in this, mate. You could go home rich.
You're playing music.
I know.
So how can I hear what I'm saying?
Well, surely a prince's brain knows what its mouth's doing.
You're not well acquainted with royal princes, are you? Hopeless. Hopeless.
You were sublime. Would I lie to a prince of the realm to win 12 pennies?
I've no idea what an Australian might do for that sort of money.
Let me play it back to you.
No.
All right, then, and I get to ask you the questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I don't feel this is for me. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Sir? The recording is free. Please keep it as a souvenir.
This is fall off his horse.
Sir?
He's... When I'm dead, that boy will ruin himself, this family, and this nation. Herr Hitler intimidated...
Strictly business. Hear what I'm saying.
Okay, now I want you to see, you saw what happened. The next 1 minute clip is going to focus on what happens when he hears the recording. And please give me a second to shift this to the appropriate place. I think I'll just have to wait here. And let it take its course. Maybe we can pause it. We can pause the recording for a minute.
You're playing music. I know. So how can I hear what I'm saying?
Well, surely a prince's brain knows what its mouth's doing.
You're not well acquainted with royal princes, are you? To be or not to be?
That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep, no more. And by sleep to say the end, the heartache and the thousand natural shocks, the flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation hopeless.
Strictly business.
Okay, we saw what happened, and in class I would like you to discuss what just happened. Please discuss this. Please also discuss why listening might be important for the manager. In addition to what I've just told you, what are the specific activities in which listening can help a manager? And I would like you to discuss what the connection between listening and speaking can be. Is listening always beneficial? Do we always need to listen? What can listening interfere with? What is the connection between listening and speech? How does listening contribute to speaking? How does listening affect speaking? Think about these things, discuss these things, and we will talk some more in the next class. The next class will exclusively focus on listening and the barriers to listening and the applications of listening in the business environment. So, thank you for today.